everybody? This is Dan, usually from Japan, but not right now, but still coming to you live. Yes, everybody. This is not a simulation. This is really me from an undisclosed location in Tel Aviv, Israel. Just wrapping up my 5-country world tour of Ergo and Cardano stuff, and small hotel rooms, medium-sized hotel rooms, and really small airplane seats. And that is the life I have chosen. And with me, I have no other than Joseph Armeanio, coming to you live from that room with the nice leather couch.
In my basement. What's up, everybody? I hope everybody's having a good week out there. It's kind of crazy time in the space. We had a good developer update this last week. As we move forward, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Personally, I'm a big fan of food holidays. I don't really care what it's about, but, when you have time for family, friends, food, that's good. Take time to enjoy it. We're going to have a mini summit that's kicking off this weekend. I hope people out there that have time, can tune in. We are going to start. This is kind of a tradition to highlight some of the projects, what they're working on, what they're thinking, where they could go. It's a great way to try to engage community and get support around some of the development ideas that are out there. And I hope that those of you that tune in, watch, potentially even could contribute or support some of our community devs in terms of what they're trying to push out in the ecosystem, and maybe even think a couple steps ahead in terms of how things could plug together and how the ecosystem could grow.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Community involvement is crucial. It's very crucial. We have to be work together, but still kind of stay semi-autonomous, right? To really balance out one party not doing everything that they promise, so that there's somebody else who can step in and kind of fill the demand. And that's why these things are so important. It's why the hacks are so important. This is why these summits are so important. Now, actually, speaking of summits, I hope that Alex doesn't get mad at me and do whatever, beat me with his white headset. But we were actually talking when I met him in Dubai. We were actually talking about potentially doing a tour next year of several places along the Middle East and Europe, and just have a meeting with Argonauts and having events. So that's something that I'm actually really looking forward to. Again, the details are still just basically me and Alex spoke about this. That's as far as we've gotten. But I do think great idea. I think that it will really help, just kind of ramp up and boost community engagement. And it's good to see people in, face to face. We had a few people, including Fo, come out to the Cardano Summit in Switzerland. So it was great to see him and other Ergo people. I had some people I've actually never met stop and say hi to me, or walk by me and be like, Ergo. So obviously recognize me from the ecosystem, and it's just really great to see people I've not met that are also engaged and just kind of time to say hi. So I'm still very bullish about our ecosystem. Regardless of what macro is telling us, I guess we're one of those ecosystems that's truly resilient to a lot of this bullshit. That's really making some of the big boys crumble right now.
Yeah.
So, a couple of updates from me. So I have, of course, continued work on the ecosystem fund and boost plan that I've had in the works for, it's probably a couple of months now. By now, it's been almost 2 months. Again, that's in the works. That is, it's coming along. I will share more details as they come up, but just to let you know that that is actively being worked on. Also, myself as well as others from the Zengate side, as well as from the core team side, are providing support for the Rosen Bridge team to get things properly benchmarked and rolled out. I, on my end, am also liaisoning some connections and some ways to get the bridge adopted throughout the EUTXO ecosystem. And I think it's going to be, it's going to be a game changer for us when, not if, but when the Rosen Bridge is propagated through the system. It's going to be a huge thing for us. It's going to be a huge achievement for the entire space. And so I'm very excited about that. And that's really what I want to see with the project. Just personally, I would like to see this bridge not just be a Cardano Ergo bridge, but to be an EUTXO bridge, which it can be very, it's not simple, but it is doable, and just needs to support that I believe that myself as well as the core team can provide for them. So again, really excited about that. Really, it's a nice shining light for us. On the exchange side, again, talks continue. As you can understand, right now, things with exchanges are not really as smooth as one would hope. So there's some patience that's required for that. Again, that's in the works, and I will give you updates once that that there's further development.
All right, you want to get to questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
All right, just one moment. All right, let's get to some questions. All righty. There was a good one that really has to do with okay, so here's I guess this is really important for the ecosystem right now because of the recent news. So kind of get this sorted right here. So how can we prevent rug pulls or similar behavior in the projects built on the Ergo on the Ergo, I guess on Ergo, and they're talking about Cardano, by the way. So you might have heard knocking, just to kind of give you a heads up, like you might have heard knocking. So I am in a hotel room right now doing this podcast, and we had a very resilient housekeeping person that just didn't understand that I'm doing stuff right now. So just kept knocking and knocking and knocking. And even though I told her, please come back later, what time? When? Like, just go. Anyway, let's get back to the question. Yeah, this is the life, this is the life of being on the road. You try to make things look nice and, and clean with the curtains behind me, but you guys just have no idea. I'm in a pretty small room next to basically a bed, my suitcase, and the bathroom. So this is actually the only angle that I could take, or else you'd be my bed or the bathroom. So pardon the chaos, but that's what I got to work with. All right, let's get back to the question here. All right, so how can we prevent rug pulls or similar behavior in the projects built in Ergo? Well, so I mean, Joe, I'm sure you have your own, I guess, outlook on this, but I mean, really, look, can you prevent rug pulls? Well, no, you can't. You can't because you're dealing with humans. You can do all you can to kind of mitigate and to create a condition where more accountability is, I guess, required for projects to pursue a course within the ecosystem, right? So if there's, say, community funds involved, report to the community, have milestone reports for the community, asking for transparency, having a minimum viability for transparency in projects that the community reporting. Again, if there is actually investor funds or crowd investor funds from the community, that's again something that is important to have paradigms for, right? So what are they minimally required to do? And I mean, but overall, really, you know what? If you're a project in the ecosystem and you're building something on Cardano or an Ergo, or, well, in this case, we're talking about Ergo, regardless of the conditions of around you, it is your sole responsibility to deliver a product. That is your responsibility as a project. You are solely responsible for delivering a product. And anything can come up. Okay, I mean, the Ergo core development team could turn into evil lizards. Okay, and do just lizard stuff, and you're not going to be able to use the tooling and all these things. You have to plan for the worst. Okay, try your best, but prepare for the worst. Okay, have contingency plans. Have ways that you can, plan A, plan B, plan Z, and even think further. If you cannot deliver, face the reality. If I cannot deliver, what do I do? And the bottom line here is full transparency. Doesn't matter how painful it is. Don't protect anybody. Don't try to play, by anybody's fiddle. Think about the product and think about delivery. It just all comes down to personal responsibility as a business person, as a project, or as a project, as a group of business people. So again, can we prevent them? No, I don't think we can. Can we mitigate them? Yes, I think so. But ultimately, it is up to you to really use your own judgment and really do your own research. Use your own judgment, understand how to screen projects for yourself, and just be careful out there. Nothing is 100% safe. Thoughts on that, Joe?
Oh, hold your butt, Dan. I could go forever on this topic.
Holding.
So let's start with the basics, okay? In my opinion, if I'm going to build something as a developer and I want to profit solely from my project, I think I should make it immutable and build in fees, right? That way it's use case. And if I build something that's popular, I get an economic benefit from what I build. Now, we've shifted as an industry for, it's been a while since like 2017, where we had this idea of distributed ownership and kind of, let's say, the DAO type of governance infrastructure. So far, in my opinion, it's pretty much a fucking joke, right? And you can look at the goal of that should be to eliminate single points of failure, right? To where if I can move the governance of a project into a distributed environment, at that point, there may be leaders, but there's not somebody that could just rug a project, right? Because ideally it's distributed, and at that point, single points of failure are eliminated and community funds are kind of under distributed management. So if the dev team, doesn't deliver, they should be able to be removed and replaced. If, a leader in the project, let's say creates a political issue with their, let's say, community, or is just net irresponsible with the distributed business, they should be able to be removed, right? And the reality is the blockchain is actually a very powerful place to put that type of immutable tooling, right? We do have the project in the Ergo system, Paideia, and that's basically what they're trying to do, is to say, okay, how can we take a governance token and actually govern instead of, take something, speculate on it, and then if one guy changes his mind, everybody loses all their money. That's a terrible idea. And in my opinion, you got to be very, very, very careful with a lot of these governance tokens because they don't fucking do anything, right? And you have people that get hurt. You have people that lose real money because they have some idea that, it's going to be profitable, and they don't manage risk. If you were to look in like the traditional VC environment, if I were to come in with just an idea and say, okay, I don't have a minimal viable product, I have no code, but I've got a nice idea, the majority of the time you would get laughed out of the room, right? And I do think that it is a good idea for people that are going to invest their funds in future ideas to make sure that it's a solid idea, that, there's at least a probability of delivery. And, when markets are hot, people just throw their money at stuff. Risk assessment goes out the window and things overheat and markets correct. And then risk is readjusted, right? And so kind of right now in our space, we do have, let's say, a lot of counterparties that have done terrible in terms of risk management. And, we've seen a lot of large companies blow up over the last year, whether it's risk management and code or risk management and investments. But the goal for every user should be, okay, how can you minimize risk, right? And we do have tooling that is coming that can assist in terms of actual distributed ownership, distributed development. But, if you're going to have a governance token and you have zero power, you have zero, let's say, visibility in terms of funds, you have zero, let's say, awareness in terms of what's actually happening, you don't govern anything. You just have a speculative asset. And so I would encourage people to really search, in terms of the, let's say, rug pull aspect, where are you putting your trust, right? Because the idea behind, blockchains as a whole should be minimizing or eliminating trust. And so if we can, create systems where we do have kind of the community or distribution of trust in terms of projects and their development, it would be much harder to rug pull. What someone would end up doing is just getting removed from the project, right? And certainly open source code is going to be beneficial there. Certainly the idea that, we're just going to throw our money at things, hopefully, people stay away from, because it generally doesn't end well. But I do agree with Dan that you cannot eliminate bad actors, but what you can do is you can put them in an environment where they don't have absolute control, right? And if you have a environment where you have distributed trust and transparency, it can be difficult to be a bad actor because, suddenly people can see that there's visibility, right? So I would hope that, as the space matures, we actually do see more engagement in terms of the governance side. And the reality is, if you buy a governance token just to speculate and you don't have the tools to engage and you don't have the desire to engage, I really have to question whether that's a good idea or not, because, hopefully you take power in that project. And that's ultimately, in my opinion, how you can protect yourself. Now, I do think the best standard is to have a minimal viable product before you fundraise, but I also recognize that development does have a certain cost overhead, right? And that can be a difficult thing to achieve depending on how ambitious the project is. But you can still put things in a distributed environment, even if it's more building on an idea. Now, in terms of behavior, I think you just have to enforce as much as possible on chain, whether it's unlocks, payments, treasuries, you kind of have to use the tooling of the blockchain itself to try to protect malicious behavior. Now, you can't always eliminate malicious actors, but I do think a lot can be done to disempower them. In terms of more the immutable fee-based model, there's an incentive for developers to pursue that. And the nice thing about that methodology of development is it doesn't require governance, right? The downside is if there's a problem, everybody can kind of lose and then you have to update, but you do learn and you do harden things over time if you build open source the right way. So hopefully it's something that the community, and not just Ergo, but beyond Ergo, matures about. I think that ultimately, if you take that responsibility to minimize the power that bad actors can have, you protect yourself and everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. You're developing in an ecosystem where you are, when your main tools should be trustless environment. And just like with anything, you should be utilizing the trust environment for a contingency in your own business. So absolutely, Joe, I definitely agree with that. And hopefully we could mature as an ecosystem and create the tooling that will, I guess, allow us for better governance, better community governance of these projects. So let's get to another question here. Let's see. Okay, well, so Joe, here's a question. Can you please drop the drop quote of the week for us, please, sir? What is the quote of the week?
I have no idea. It's too early. It just comes naturally. You can't fake it.
Yep. So that is the quote of the week. It's too early. Yeah. All right. So here's a nice question just to get an up. So have the recent ErgoHex submissions been ranked released? So
they have.
What's the update?
Yeah, they have. I do know that we released a blog post covering some of the submissions. We also had a great community video come together. We'll have to post a link on our Twitter and across our socials that kind of gives a brief update covering the hackathon. And this weekend, we have our first post-hackathon mini summit where you can actually tune into the developers that, contributed. And, they made a video covering what they did, why they did, and hopefully where they want to take their project. I've seen a few of the videos. It's good stuff. So if you have time this weekend or, later, please tune in.
Yep. And so here's another good question here. I mean, it's a question that I think has been answered before, but just to give you guys yet another point on this. When cold wallet, now cold wallet, if you use the Terminus app for iOS or the Ergo wallet for Android, Mr. S, because I still can't, Mr. Steelwheel, say. I'm going to translate the name. Mr. Steelwheel has created an amazing function in these wallets to be able to use your old smart devices or your retro smart devices as cold wallet storage. So yes, it is available, and yes, you can use it. So hopefully that answered that question.
I'll add to that if I can, Dan.
Yeah, please.
I'm sure the question has to do with Ledger. I've been bothering them. I've pointed Nemo and Anon BR, who are actively testing both of the Ledger update that we were asked to do and integrating it into Nautilus. In terms of when that's actually going to be supported, I haven't heard from the other side yet, but at this point we have like 4 people on it. So pushing it as much as I can.
Yeah, yep. It is working. I think. I guess. Well, there was a question later specifically about Ledger from somebody else, but yeah, that's good that you answered that. Okay, let's go to a couple of Rosen Bridge questions here. Okay, well, first one is from Mr. Augustus Kent. Do you think the Rosen Bridge will automatically bring others into our ecosystem, but need to be paired with an awareness marketing campaign? Any plans? So personally, I think that it's not really about an awareness campaign as much as it is about, I guess, partnering with entities and working with entities that would utilize the bridge within their own ecosystem, right? So, yes, of course, I would like to get the word out. And we will, we'll have an organic campaign that will get the word out. But really, I think the key here is to kind of facilitate. Okay, where can we plug in to get the most adoption on as large of scale as possible? Plug it in there, work with those entities, and just kind of grow it out from there. What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
So if you look at how the Rosen Bridge is structured, you have 2 different sets of actors. You have the watchers, which, use, tooling off chain to basically notify the guards that then execute transactions, right? I believe last I heard, which was maybe 2 days ago, the guard set that is being tested right now is up to 30 guards. And potentially what that could do is allow us to partner with 30 projects or blockchains, to where, let's use the example, we have a certain set of guards that have assets that are useful in terms of moving into multiple environments. And then we also have, partner networks that are working as a guard set. That actually works in our favor quite well in terms of rapid adoption, because we don't necessarily need to scale the smart contract logic on Ergo by design. And then we would have other blockchains that, are working in their own native environment to set up the threshold or a multi-sig aspect in their local environment. And potentially, if we partner with the right people, which is still kind of a work in progress, we could have multiple environments or bridges being spun up simultaneously with minimal audit, because the logic itself is isolated to Ergo.
Right. So let's see. Well, I guess we can go to a follow-up question from Augustus Kent. Do we know if anybody outside of the Ergo ecosystem is excited and waiting for the Rosen Bridge? I can tell you, yes, for a fact, there is excitement, and there is, there's people waiting for the Rosen Bridge outside the Ergo ecosystem, in the Cardano ecosystem, as well as there's like Nervos and other EUTXO members. So again, as I said in the beginning, I think that it's important for us to give as much support as possible to Rosen Bridge to not just become an Ergo Cardano bridge, but to become an EUTXO bridge, the go-to standard for EUTXO bridge. Okay, and so, well, here's one that actually you can answer, and I can answer, but I'll let you take a first stab at it here, Joe. So, Bison Buffalo is asking: is it possible at the moment for dApps and another chains to utilize Ergo for Oracle services?
It depends whether those other chains support that type of input and how. And, I'll use the example, we've had Oracle V1 live for a long time. And theoretically, you could have already ported that to Cardano a while ago, right? The difficulty was in order to use it, you would have to basically spend the box and then re-update the box. And it was not very economically efficient. That never really happened. But in theory, anyway, it could have. So one thing you have to keep in mind with Oracle data is, let's say, how the recipient chain is going to use that. Now, we are still working and actively kind of in the later stages of development and testing of the Oracle V2 framework on Ergo, which should be a lot more economically efficient on our side in terms of how the process works. So I do think that is something that we will expand. Now, in my opinion, the first place that makes sense to kind of expand that Oracle tooling is on Ergo itself, right? We have basically a really nice development environment for different DeFi frameworks. And so as that toolkit kind of gets built out, then the question becomes, okay, how do we distribute it properly and kind of get the community engaged? Because the Ergo Foundation is not designed to, let's say, operate these for profit. We just do research development, make tools, and hand them to the community to then build business. So it will become kind of the community responsibility to use them, when and where it makes sense. I do know that there was a previous hackathon project called Delphi that actually did a really great job in terms of setting the initial framework or idea of how that could be done in a distributed way by the community. And I do hope that, that team is still around and kind of picks up Oracle V2 and helps us build out a lot of the infrastructure. If we can make the off-chain infrastructure for running Oracle services as easy as possible, I think we'll get more participants. Then, of course, you have to ask the question, okay, well, at what point is kind of the economic benefit going to kind of be diluted through excessive participation? And, the market will figure that out. I can't answer that, but there's certainly a lot that we can do to grow.
Yeah, and Delphi is, the libraries are still available, right? Right, Joe? They're open source. And so the work libraries are still available. In fact, I am hoping to utilize it with Palmyra as we build it out, because that really is a really nice Oracle solution and just kind of sitting there. And as Joe said, I also hope that the team continues to build it up to V2, because it's a very important it's a very important set of tools. All right, let's move on to the next question here. Okay, well, so here's one from Sigmanaut. He's asking, Dan, why was there no Ergo booth at the Cardano Summit in Lausanne? I still don't know how to pronounce it right, and I spent like 3 days there. Anyway, Lausanne. Would have loved to hear you speak on stage instead of some bankers who paid to be there. Well, first of all, why was there an Ergo booth? It just comes down to prioritizing budgets. Lausanne is not the easiest place to get all of our resources to. Would have loved to have a booth there, but we need to make sure we prioritize things in the foundation, that are more important right now. And of course, being present there is important. I was there, and I think we felt that it was kind of enough of a presence for the Ergo ecosystem for me to be there. Would love to have a booth. Maybe in the future when market conditions are a little better, we will have a booth there. But again, just I mean, I don't want to sound, I guess, I don't know what the word is, negative here, but we do have better things to spend money right now, or more important things to rather spend money on right now.
I think it's also important for everyone out there to recognize it's kind of a dick move to invite yourself to things, right? Just kind of force yourself. That was a Cardano event. Let them enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm sure that also, well, okay, you are right about inviting yourself. I think that the Cardano Foundation would have been happy to have Ergo there. But again, it just comes down to what are we looking to do there? Okay, so it costs, you need to have a nice amount of budget to make that happen. Is that going to be worth for us in the long run? What are we going to get from it, right? What kind of exposure we're going to get from that? Like I said, I was there. Many other Ergonauts were there. And we just felt that, as Joe said, it is a Cardano event. And for this year, would have to do with that. Now, as far as me speaking at the summit, look, there were a lot of people there that were very good, that were, that deserved to be up there. I would have loved to be up there, but, can't have everything. So maybe next time. And, you guys can always hear me speak here, and you can always reach out to me, as many of you have been doing lately. So don't worry about it. I think we did get exposure for Cardano Summit, and just basically because so many Ergonauts were there, and because the Cardano community is very symbiotic with the Ergo community, and so many Ergonauts were there because they're also Cardano people. So again, can't have everything, but I think we made the right move this time to kind of keep things minimal. All right, let's move on to the next question here. Okay, so this is a nice one for Joe. I know that Joe likes these types of questions. So what's the privacy capabilities of Ergo compared to privacy coins like Monero or Zcash, etc.? Would Ergo be less private?
Okay, so privacy usually depends on the anonymity set. So right now, if we wanted to try to compete with something like Zcash or Monero, what we would need is more liquidity in the mixer. Now, one thing that's been kind of in research and development this year is the second iteration of the mixer, which is called Sigma Join, which allows for outsourceable mixing. And what that means is basically you can kind of use the mixer more as a service in between different applications or infrastructure. Now, the question in terms of building the anonymity set is twofold. The first has to do with the amount of liquidity and the set of actors that are participating to providing mixer liquidity, because as that set grows, you basically get better assumptions in terms of not knowing who's doing what, versus if it was just like one guy mixing your money, that one character could potentially, connect the input and the output. The second has to do with the rounds of mixing, right? So if you have ever used the Ergo mixer, you have the ability to choose the number of rounds that tokens are mixed, and that is a part of what builds the anonymity set. So those are the two factors to consider: the number of actors and the distribution of them, and then the number of rounds. And that will kind of make things, let's say, more private.
Excellent. I think that, well, I guess it's not exactly along the lines of what we spoke about, but kind of close, right? Or what you spoke about right now, but kind of close, and also has to do with just general, I guess, security and exploit dangers of using bridges. So please explain how Rosen avoids security flaws that have caused failure in other bridges. So you want to take a stab at this, well, Joe?
Sure. So the Rosen Bridge really has a pretty simple design. Okay, if you look at this year, most of the hacks have been either a failure of distribution in terms of like the set of actors controlling the bridge. In some case, I know in one hack it was like 2 of 5, which is pretty sad. Another has to do with smart contract logic exploits, where one side of the bridge basically had some vulnerabilities where you could manipulate the logic in terms of how the smart contract received calls. The other had to do with falsifying proofs, where the idea was, okay, we can make it totally trustless and provide a proof, and then someone basically created a fraudulent proof that caused the bridge to execute. So in terms of Rosen, we've kind of looked at failure after failure after failure and tried to understand, okay, how do these things fail? And what we did was we minimized the footprint and tried to learn from basically things that blew up in the past and what we learned post-mortem. Now, in traditional finance, you have kind of a 2-step process where you have clearance and then settlement of funds, right? And those are usually 2 kind of distinct steps in transferring funds, in the traditional banking system. And that's a part of where the idea of a second layer of authentication came into being with the Rosen Bridge. Is what if we basically have these watchers that kind of act as the clearance mechanism, where they, their job is to see and report things, and then you have another layer or set of actors that basically settles or executes, bridge transfers. So our goal is to create those 2 sets of actors and basically try to distribute trust among them, where, we definitely get a lot better than 2 of 5, because that was a point of failure. Now, in terms of scalability, that's an open question, right? Where if I bridge between myself and another chain, I have to audit both sides if there's logic on both sides, and that takes time and money, and I'm in a new environment that I may not be as familiar in building with, and every time I scale to a new project, I have to understand how their chain works, how their smart contracts work, how their logic works. And so you scale vulnerability as the bridge expands, right? And so we thought, okay, well, what if we take this let's say 2-layer authentication bridge, and we try to create a home base, right? To where all of the smart contract logic itself is in our environment that we understand, that we've worked with, that we can have, better assumptions on. And then we use Ergo itself as the mechanism for watchers, guards, and then we simply execute on other chains without needing as much, let's say, of their tool set.
Yeah. And actually, this is a nice follow-up to that. So is Rosen Bridge to Bitcoin possible?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, just taking into account what Joe just said about understanding the environment of the other chain that you're connecting to, is the actual tech, does the tech allow it to happen? Yes. Yes, it is possible, and this is exactly why I think that the Rosen Bridge is such a powerful tool for our ecosystem, because it is just easy for it to be created, to be set as a standard in the ecosystem, because it is just so straightforward and simple design, that will really mitigates vulnerability, which is, it's crucial in today's day and age, because people just don't trust us anymore. I was just speaking to a company here in Tel Aviv that also creates bridges, that's saying that they're struggling because of that, because not struggling as in they can't do business. They're doing business, but it is hindering ability to get, for people to trust in any bridge, because of so many exploits that have happened with bridges in the past year. All the major ones pretty much got hacked, and whatever the case that is, whether it's flaws in coding, flaws in security, flaws in execution. Bottom line is that you highly increase your vulnerability by going from one ecosystem to another, but for going from one blockchain to another, and for the blockchain movement, for what we're doing to be really taken by industry. These things have to be mended before we can expect an influx of people. Because, imagine if this would have happened with with the legacy financial institutions. Like, say, imagine if the Visa network was hacked like 4 times and hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen from the Visa network. That would be a major issue. That would bring them down.
Yeah, they have a counterparty that they pay for that type of event. And when you're talking peer to peer, part of the reason why security is so critical is you can't just call up your insurance company and say, hey, we had a problem, but we pay you, so cover it.
No, I'm pretty sure that the insurance companies are not going to, are not going to write checks for $500 million. Because how much has been stolen so far, Joe? Do you have those numbers? I think it's something along those lines. It's like several $100 million. No,
it's in the billions. I think it's 2.2 billion in this year in terms of hack.
Yeah, 2.2 billion. No insurance company is going to insure you against $2.2 billion worth of losses. So, you can't shift responsibility here. We have to take responsibility and build better, as an industry. All right, let's see. So, Joe, I got one. FPA Ergo.
Okay, so that's a good question. I get this question a lot from miners, right? You have this thing called a field programmable gate array, which is basically like a blank chip that you can custom design circuitry on, that can, potentially mine autolicos, right? And so there's a confusion between a field programmable gate array and an ASIC, right? An ASIC is basically a prefabricated chip that is designed for a single purpose, versus a field programmable gate array is a blank chip that you build the circuitry on, right? Now, if you look at the specialty, let's say in terms of manufacturing of field programmable gate arrays, I think really the only company, in the world right now that could probably build that at scale is going to be Xilinx, right? And Xilinx also has a backlog of I think a maximum order of 5 and let's say almost a year wait time. So they're very hard to actually source. And usually if you're you need to buy quite a few, right? Now we're talking large, like data center type acquisitions. Now, in terms of a project, right? I think that if I were to just say, okay, guys, this is what I'm going to do, right? Number one, that's not very decentralized now, is it? Right? We do have governance that is basically given to the miners in Ergo, and I would hope that this is a continual discussion, beyond just fix it, guys, because the reality is, if we're going to be a decentralized network, let's not just like pretend to be one and then have one dude who does everything, right? I think that is like the dumbest approach to this industry that I see all the time. Like, if I
do something,
yeah, if I see it, I'm going to take my crown and say, we're going to fork, right? Like, that's pathetic. That's not decentralized. That's one dude in charge. The whole goal is to get the community engaged and have discussions. Now, we have a lot of factors to consider. Number one, these things are not widely available. Number two, they're highly expensive. And number three, we also have an algorithm where the mem table increases over time. And what that means is that as the mem table increases, it's going to overload that chip's capacity to potentially mine autoligos. And that's something that, some of our big brains in the mining community certainly can spec out. They can say, okay, based on, our mem table increase, this is the life expectancy of this particular chip. This is the cost of that chip. Is it economically viable, right? And what is the actual advantage in terms of the megahash per watts versus the cost, right? Because mining is a business where you're trying to ultimately become profitable. So there are a lot of good questions and discussions and debates and research to have. Unfortunately, in the mining community, it usually breaks down to these YouTube influencers that, their head's always on fire. I don't see a lot of like intelligent discussion that's actually proactive. I just see reactive bullshit that's meant to get clicks and views. So it's something that I hope that the mining community takes a lot of responsibility for, because it's a good discussion to have. It really is. It's something that I would love to see the mining community take lead on, because we're a decentralized network. Now, we'll have to see. I do know that I imagine FPGAs are going to become more popular because they're useful in a lot of different industrial purposes, right? And it's hard to predict the advancement of that technology, right? So I hope it's an ongoing discussion that, in essence, never really stops, because it's something that we, should continually observe and understand and kind of evolve around as a community. Now, there is a downside. Let's say that, I know there's one company that is coming out with, I think it's called the E300, which is a lot more optimized for Caspa than Ergo anyway. But what you would find, or what we have to ask is, okay, if we were to say, I'm the king and I'm just going to fork the network, which I can't do anyway. I think that's a dumb approach. What would that do to anyone that's running potentially smaller cards? It would kick them off the network, right? So if I had a 4 gigabyte card that, was mining Ergo, we would basically be rugging that subset of miners. And so we have to have that debate or discussion as a community. Is it worth rugging, a set of actors in our community to prevent a very small subset of people that are running chips that might not even economically make sense? That's something that takes critical thinking. I hope that the mining community will consider both sides of that, because the reality is, I would like to see home miners supported. I would like to see the barrier of entry as low as possible, but I'm one guy, right? And the reality is, post-ETH, you do have a ton of very large farms with very cheap electricity that already exist that are kind of either active or sidelined, that probably are going to come in at a profit advantage, even considering FPGAs, because they're probably already they're probably already profitable and have paid off a lot of equipment just based on the history of mining ETH. So having your head on fire over some potential technology that gives someone a minor advantage, in my opinion, is stupid, looking at the broader mining environment where you have some entrenched, very large players that are coming in at a much larger advantage than even those particular FPGAs.
Yeah. Well, I also think that just in general, you touched on an important point here. There is, and this is actually a conversation that I had just yesterday about general Bitcoin mining, and specifically just and POW chains of Bitcoin, Ergo and other POW chains. And so what's going to happen right now? Okay, we're at the bottom of the market, I guess. Nobody knows, but I guess we are. There's other stuff that's happening, and you got miner pressure. The miners have sell pressure right now, and what if they dump? Well, first of all, I think that at this point, and I could take it, but that at this point, the miners that are left operating right now are doing what you and I spoke about a little while back. And that is, they're looking at their operation, they keep the operation running as an investment into the ecosystem. So the guys that are left over right now, this is not just just a dollar for dollar type of stuff. It's not just about, okay, where can I get the most profit out, right? Because, I mean, at this point, pretty much all POW chains are just not profitable to mine. So at this point, the miners that are left over are the ones that are investing in the future. And so I think that these guys are a lot more resilient now. And so, these guys are just going to wake up in the morning and say, screw this, I invested all this money into this, but I'm just going to dump. I just don't see that happening in this, I guess, in this point in time on any significant scale.
I think a lot depends on how over leveraged these, various actors are. If they've already covered costs on equipment, their carrying costs are lower because they've already covered the cost of equipment. And I think there's a lot of miners that came through this last cycle that paid off all of their equipment. It does irk me a little bit that you have miners that migrated from ETH. And the biggest issue with ETH was you had this small set of overlords that said, this is what they're doing, and the miners had no say. Right. And then they come to Ergo where they actually have governance. They actually have the ability to have independent power. And they say, Mr. King, please fix it. Like, that just makes me want to cry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I don't want to bring up such an extreme analogy, but I mean, that's what happens with being abused. Sometimes when you take somebody out of an abusive situation, they lapse because they just don't know what to do when they're not being abused anymore. And they look for somebody to get back to a place that they understand. And I think that's what's happening with some of these miners that kind of made it sound like that, because they were getting, abused for so long by Big Daddy ETH that when they were taken and then put into an ecosystem where they do have say, like they were supposed to with ETH, they just don't know what to do with it. Like, so what do? We don't have Big Daddy ETH telling us how it is. It's it's kind of like that one part. So sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I said they have to take responsibility. I'm nobody's sugar daddy. They have to take responsibility. You have the ability as a miner to update a variety of parameters. You have the ability to submit reference clients and potentially fork the chain. That is your business, right? And please use that in a way that supports you as a business operator, but also supports the network and provides some economic incentives for developers to build frameworks on top of the network. But I would love to see that become independent, where people don't even ask me that question. They just take responsibility.
It's about self-responsibility. You're in a distributed network. You're in a you're supposed to be in a trustless environment, right? So while you can hope for people to have ethics, hope for people to be intruders, you should really, you're responsible. Ultimately, you are responsible.
It's the same as the governance token. It's the exact same scenario, right? Like, people want to say, okay, I want to trust you, right? That's not the point. That shouldn't be the point, is, I want to find a team I can trust so I can buy the governance token and just make some money. No, if you're going to buy a governance token, you should have governance power, right? As a miner, you have governance power. I would love to see, a spirited debate, discussion, in terms of what's coming, because collectively the community is smarter than me. Collectively, the mining community is smarter than me, and I would love to see that mind share grow and, become more active, engaged, involved, and ultimately run the network. That's what it was designed for.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave it off for this week. And so thanks everyone.
If you don't mind, I'd like to answer a question that I see here that I think is important to cover.
Okay. All right. We're bonus question.
Bonus question.
Go for it.
Jai, is the Ergo Treasury Fund verifiable by the public? Yes. It's always been on chain. It always will be on chain. We'll never put it in FTX or any other exchange because that's dumb. We keep it on the network. The wallet address is public. We can always post it. It's something that you can track, you can follow, you can understand what it's worth in real time. The Ergo Foundation is not a rich organization, which is wonderful because, we basically have a natural barrier to dealing with this space, and it can be greasy where, everybody wants a little bit of grease for everything, and we're poor. So what do? We build.
Yeah. We build instead of buy our way out building. Yeah. So like that's what I was saying. It would have been nice to have a booth at Cardano Summit, but we got more important things that we'd like to spend this money on that is directly impactful for the ecosystem. And there's plenty of stuff that we can spend it on. Plenty of stuff, guys. That's going to have a much more profound direct impact on what you're doing and what you're building in the ecosystem, and just in general, and the growth of the ecosystem. All right, guys. Well, I guess any more bonus questions, Joe?
No, but I think that's important to address because, there's a lot of fear, FUD in the space, and a lot of projects did not do well in terms of risk management and being responsible for their treasury, especially given some of the deleveraging and blowups that have happened. But we weren't invited to the orgies. We weren't offered drugs. Everything is on chain. And we're too poor to bribe people on a high level like many other projects. So what do? We build.
Yeah. No money to pay for TVL, guys. Sorry. If you came here to get paid for TVL, go to the Solana access of the world, or the Eptasuis. What is the new one? Eptasui?
I don't even know. I lose track. Flavor of the week.
Anyway. Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. So long.
Have a good one, everybody.